This is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
No, Virginia, there is no such thing as a fake Israel. Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. That'll just be one of the things we discuss. We also want to talk about a wonderful gathering coming to Western Ohio, Eastern Indiana, the suburbs of Dayton in late July, the Go Therefore Conference at the Harvest Revival Center in Brookline, Ohio. We'll talk about that over the next hour or so. Our guest is a pastor, an author, a scholar, and we are honored to call him our friend. He has authored a number of books that we recommend, including a couple that one that we talked about in particular on our Unraveling Revelation program, Letters from Jesus, what the seven ecclesias in Revelation 2 and 3 say to us today. He's also authored commentaries on the book of Daniel. He's got another book that we need to discuss on Unraveling Revelation, The Four Horses of Revelation 6, a new prophetic interpretation. But you can find all of his work at his website, drmikespalding.com, and we welcome to the program the aforementioned Dr. Mike Spalding. Mike, it's good to see you again.
Derek, it's always a pleasure to chat with you, brother, and looking forward to July and what has become for most a sort of reunion and getting to see friends that we follow each other on social media, but it's not the same thing as being able to embrace one another and just look each other in the eye and say, I sure have missed you. Yeah,
absolutely. And this conference, as all of us, we were kind of talking before recording the program, just sort of commiserating on the ravages of age. We're none of us getting younger, and so each time we can get together at this stage of life, it's becomes more and more appreciated. The lineup for the Go Therefore Conference, July 26th and 27th, includes Tom Dunn, Dr. Judd Burton, Dr. Greg Reed, who's become a good friend, and we're very happy that after his bicycle accident earlier this year that he's going to be able to make it, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, who's become a friend, and a really wonderful help to a friend of ours, Kenny C., in his health issues. Pastor Carl Gallups, Pastor Paul Begley, L.A. Marzulli. Bringing this group together for 2 days, for one weekend, is a conference lineup that, it's hard to find such a range of topics and expertise. Spiritual warfare, Tom Dunn and Greg Reed, both of whom have firsthand experience dealing with the demonic realm. Greg personally coming out of satanic ritual abuse. You've got the archaeologist and theologian, Dr. Judd Burton, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, whose medical expertise, coupled with a biblical understanding and a hunger to learn more. Carl Gallups, Pal Begley, who as preachers, you just don't get more, of the spirit when pastors preach than them. And then, Sharon and I are just honored to be a part of this whole gathering. So we are really looking forward to that. And there's information online for people interested at gothereforeconference.com. What led you, Mike, for you and Kathy to want to take on the work of coordinating events like this?
Well, we never thought that it would turn into what it has. I'll say that right up front. We didn't really even know what the Lord wanted. He just said, impressed upon us, I want you to do a conference. I was looking around. I was traveling to Colorado Springs for the Prophecy Watchers and going to different conferences like that. And I thought, that would be cool to have one, but there's no way. We don't have a facility that would even come close to that. And so about a year after that, the Lord impressed upon us, don't worry about all of that. I just want you to do this. And so we stuck our foot in the pool and said, okay, don't know a thing about it, but we'll do it. And that first year we had 4 people and we had 4 speakers, including me, and 40 people. And so we thought, well, that wasn't bad. And so the next year we did it again. We had 8 speakers and we had 80 people. And I thought, Lord, is there some kind of relationship here? And we're just going to stop. So we decided that the third year, which would have been 2019, we're going to rent a local facility. And it's a good thing we did, because we had 20 or 21 speakers, and we had about 300 people. And that just shocked us. We just couldn't believe it. And by the way, Derek, I do want to also mention that Joe Horn is
Oh,
speaking.
yeah, I left Joe Horn off the list. Yeah, we were glad we were able to blast him out of his comfort zone. It's like, Joe, you really should do this. So, yes, Joe Horn, the host of Skywatch TV, will be there speaking as well. And boy, he's really going through a season this year. He's talked about that recently on Skywatch TV with Whispering Ponies Ranch and some of the obstacles, which are clearly coming from a spiritual direction aimed at
Yes.
getting in the way of the ministering that they're doing to children in foster care who really need it because they're at such heightened risk of all sorts of bad outcomes in their lives. So, this is something that the enemy, the principalities and powers, are taking aim at. So, Joe, I don't know if he's going to speak on that, but he certainly has a lot to talk about.
He's going to mention Whispering Ponies, but the project that he's been working on and has now brought to, well, it's almost complete. He's going to introduce it at the conference. And I told him, you take as much time as you need to go through this subject matter. And he said, well, how should I, how blunt should I be? And I said, you be as blunt as the documentary that you've produced is.
Right. And this is the documentary they've been working on for more than a year now called Rescue Us.
Yes. Yes. So, folks, you've got to be there for this one. If you've been talking about it for the number of years and saying, well, maybe next year. Well, next year's now. You don't want to miss any of these speakers. Somebody asked me, Derek, the other day, well, because they've never been to a Go Therefore conference. And he said, well, is it like a prophecy conference? And I said, no, it's nothing like a prophecy conference. This is a conference to equip, encourage, motivate, to go do the ministry. And all of these folks, I'm so blessed to say, all of the speakers are friends. I've gotten to know them over the years and never imagined that the Lord would encourage them to say yes to an invitation to come to a conference in Ohio. But they have, and all of these folks are dear friends. They're experts in their fields, and they're going to present information it's going to make the Bible come alive. That's part of the issue for the modern American church is it's become a ho-hum kind of rote ritual thing that, well, it's Sunday, so we go to church, and then we get back to our lives for the other 6.5 days. And it grieves me to say that, Derek, but it's true. So each of these speakers are just wonderful, wonderful people. And scholars and experts in their own standing and right. So we're blessed to have them all in one place for July 26th and 27th, and they can register to secure their seat at gothereforeconference.com, gothereforeconference.com.
And I will point out that the facility, the Harvest Revival Center in Brookline, which is suburban Dayton, Pastor Neil Peterson's church, is a wonderful facility for something like this because he's got it set. I mean, it's comfortable seating for one thing, unlike, say, a hotel setting where you get the folding chairs. Maybe they've got padding, but here you've got some very comfortable seating for the event. And I've got to say, the audio-visual setup for Neil's church is wonderful. I mean, last year when I will talk to the AV guys this year and say, okay, I promise I'm not going to overrun my time like I did last year. But I was showing some wonderful drone footage from our friend Aaron Lipkin about some of the megalithic sites on the Golan Heights and in the Hula Valley, which we believe is the Valley of the Shadow of Death. And that big screen at the front, just like, wow, okay, this is what presentations are built for. This is why I have Keynote on my computer. Look, I can point out right here, walk right up to the screen. This is where John was baptizing. And so that was fantastic. So it's a great place to see a conference because those screens, those slides in the presentation, even if there's a lot of text on the slide, you'll be able to see it at this one, at this conference.
That's right.
And God bless Neil and the team at his church for the work that they put into making this a success.
Oh, they look forward to this every year, Derek. I was very taken back initially because we've never had that kind of support, willing, anxious, eager support, and it it surprised me, honestly, and it's just increased over these this will be the fourth year there now, and they have become great friends. Neil and the staff and the fellowship there, they all pitch in to make this weekend, this Friday and this Saturday, what it has become. And I can't think of Go Therefore without thinking of Harvest Revival Center. And folks, that's in Brookville, Ohio.
Brookville, not Brookline.
Yes,
sorry.
Brookville. That's about 20 minutes west of Dayton. So very, very close.
I did that last year, kept saying Brookline instead of Brookville, so forgive me for confusing things once again. Brookline is in a totally different state, so Brookville, Ohio. Suburban Dayton, just remember suburban Dayton, and you'll get there. One of the topics that I want to cover, and I really look forward, by the way, to see what Judd is going to bring. He did a presentation recently, just to give you an idea how out of the box his thinking is, but also the depth of his research. He did a presentation for Skywatch TV's recent virtual conference on the location of Babel, and postulating that maybe it wasn't in southeastern Iraq as most of us assumed. I believe that it was the ancient city of Eridu. I've written about that in several books. I know other archaeologists who agree, but I've also done a lot of study on a group of people who are much more important to biblical history and theological history than we realize. The Horites of the Bible, who were the Hurrians, who, according to archaeologists, came from the Ararat Plain, which is, Armenia below the mountains of Ararat. And their occult practices show up in the Bible in things like the medium of Endor, summoning spirits from the earth through a ritual pit. This is a very ancient practice. Well, Judd pointed out that there is a location in southern Turkey, or I guess they call it Turkey now. Anyway, Turkey, that is close to Göbekli Tepe, close to Haran, where Abraham came from, and close to the ancient city connected to the Hurrians, the oldest known city connected to this group of people, called Urkesh, which may be the Ur of the Chaldees, but that's another subject. Anyway, this location in southern Turkey is Shinar. It's just spelled with a C with the circumflex below it. C circumflex I-N-A-R. Like,
how about that?
Oh, well, now if you connect that to the biblical history and the movement of people south and west from Ararat after the ark came to rest, maybe that was the plain of Shinar and this ancient city of Urkesh, where their chief god, who I identify in my last book as Molech, Saturn, Shemayaza, Abaddon, Apollyon, same entity by different names. Boy, that kind of... Anyway, Judd, that was his presentation for Skywatch TV, that it was in Turkey. It was not in where we think of Sumer. Sumer is not Shinar. Shinar is Shinar in Turkey. Like, oh, wow. So maybe Judd will be bringing something like that to this conference. So if you find the intersection of ancient archaeology and biblical history fascinating, you'll want to see that. And for people who can't travel, Mike, I understand that I see my green screen is being moved by Grace the Wonder Dog here. So if the backdrop that you're seeing in the screen suddenly seems warped, it's because Grace is trying to get out.
Hi, Grace.
Okay. Right.
I probably shouldn't talk to her.
No, that's fine. She can't hear you. Thank you, Grace. Come over here. All right. Anyway, Judd's presentation, if you can't make it there, Judd, L.A. Marzulli, Carl Gallups, and so forth, people who can't make it to Ohio for the conference, I understand that streaming video is an option?
Yes, we will have live stream. And as packed as it was last year, Derek, we actually had more people live streaming. And that was mind-blowing because you were there. You saw that auditorium was packed, and even more watching online. So that is available when you register. There'll be a drop-down menu, folks, and you can choose live stream. And listen, if you make a mistake and choose in person, you really meant live stream, just email us. The email address is on the conference website, gothereforeconference.com. Just email us and ask us to switch. It's no big deal. We can switch it for you. It actually happens half a dozen or 10 times every year. So not a big deal.
Now, Mike, you also write for Harbinger's Daily, and you've written a couple of columns recently that kind of resonate with me because I've been reading a book that I've had in my Kindle library for quite some time. I heard some podcasts about this years ago when I was doing outside sales, and I finally got around to starting to read it on a recent airline flight. And I understand you've read it as well, Secret War Against the Jews by John Loftus and Mark Ahrens.
Yes.
Which, after reading your column on at Harbinger's Daily about God never said that he would create a fake Israel in the land, resonates because the history of the last 100 years or so, especially regarding our relationship in the West, the United States and Great Britain in particular, and our intelligence services or elements within the intelligence services, actively working to prevent the creation of an independent Jewish state. And yet Israel exists. As of 1948, May 14th, there is an Israel in the land, and yet there are Christians today now claiming that this can't be the real Israel because it wasn't created according to their standards.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Or in the way they expected, or the way they read their scriptures, or
heavens didn't open. There was no beam of light from the heavens, no choir of angels. And I don't want to set up a straw man argument to belittle anybody's beliefs, but
correct,
because it doesn't fit with their expectations of what a biblical Israel looks like. This cannot be the real Israel. And then there are a number of reasons that are given. What is your reaction to those arguments?
Yeah. So we both receive correspondence all the time about our being naive, being deceived concerning Israel. And a lot of it that I receive, it's from folks that they want to cite the banking cartels, the Rothschilds. They want to cite the Illuminati. They want to cite Masonry and all of those things as the reason why. So this can't be. And a lot of times I'll answer those objections. I don't answer everybody because some people clearly they don't want an answer. They just want to berate me. And so I don't engage in that kind of communication. But I usually respond to folks, first of all, by saying, so what you're saying is, well, pretty much what you've already said, Derek. What you're saying is that God could never use what we would consider evil to bring about his plan or purpose. And then I pause for effect, because the truth is God does that all the time. In fact, he uses things that we consider to be trouble, turmoil, trials, tribulations to work good in our lives. We know that's a promise. The same thing is true concerning his people, Israel. In fact, I posted something recently, I think it was even yesterday, that Dr. Arnold Fruchtenbaum had written to address British Israelism and the whole concept of 10 tribes being lost. And it was very good, very concise, walked through and showed why that was false. And so what we've got today, Derek, is a whole bunch of folks who claim Christ, but they're too heavily laden with what I'll just call it conspiracy, too heavily laden with conspiracy and not enough biblical understanding, history, knowledge. And I challenge people, spend as much time reading the Bible as you do perusing all of these websites that claim that Israel is this, or this, but it's not biblical Israel. If you'd study the scriptures and you would study the wealth of documents that are out there, what God has done with you and Sharon in these last 10 years, and the books that have come forth and the research into the ancient land of the Middle East and the people groups, and I mean, it's just, that's the kind of information that every Christian should have at their disposal, because if they did, Heiser's the same way. He's got a lot of work out there that if people would make use of that, they would see right through all of these conspiracy things that people try to lift up as, well, this is the truth. And so, but Derek, when we commit to the Lord to write and research and present this, we know that part of that is going to be blowback. And it's going to be people that have not taken the time to do the research that we've done. And I'm not trying to belittle anybody, but so many of the folks that are critics of modern day Israel have never taken, and it's obvious, they've never taken the time to do any real research to figure out, wow, the Bible is actually right. And the people that are in the land, I could have added something else to that article. God never said he was going to establish fake Israel. I could have added in there too that God never said that he was going to lose his people and not figure out where they're at, because that's one of the things. Well, God, who knows where the 10 tribes are at? Well, God knows. God knows exactly where they're at.
Right. If you're a Christian, you've got to believe that he is omnipotent and omniscient. And so why is this a problem?
Yes. And where else in the scriptures, or where in the scriptures, Derek, does it say that God was going to bring the people back to the land in belief?
Well, that's the other thing too. Yeah, that's one of the big criticisms. It's like, well, they've rejected Jesus. Well, yeah, so has most of the world.
Yeah. But the biblical story, the biblical narrative is that the day is coming when, as Paul said in Romans 9, all Israel will be saved. Now, people try to conflate that and it's like, no, that comes at the end of the tribulation.
Right.
Zechariah 12, when they look on him whom they have mourned and they weep. And so that's the all Israel Paul was talking about, that they will come to faith in Messiah. I don't know why that's so hard to understand, Derek.
I think a lot of people who espouse this view are looking for reasons to justify their preconceptions about Israel and about the Jews. And we in the West have been soaking in a corporate media environment. I like that term better than mainstream media, because some of the mainstream media includes things like Fox News, and I roll them into the corporate media narrative as sort of controlled opposition. The corporate media narrative for decades has been that Israel is often the aggressor, and that because, and I think it resonates here in the West because we have so desupernaturalized the Bible that we find it difficult to accept that there are people, and I'm referring now to violent Muslims, which is not radical Islam. Violent Islam is mainstream according to the teachings of Muhammad. That there are those who take their faith so seriously that they are willing to do things like Hamas did on October 7th in order to serve their God. And so when we look at the situation there, especially after 100 years of critical theory indoctrinating our university and college students, which divides the entire world into oppressor and oppressed, you view that through that situation, that dynamic in Israel and Palestine with the Palestinian Arabs as through that lens, and you've got the relatively wealthy Jewish people in Israel and the relatively poor people in the Palestinian territories, and assume, okay, it must be because the Jews are the oppressors and the Palestinian Arabs are the oppressed, and so the oppressors are bad. Okay, but you've got a 1,400-year history of Islam that suggests that they really do want to kill you and take your land. And so the students who are chanting "Free, Free Palestine" don't recognize the irony in their statement, because the last thing Hamas or Islamic Jihad or the Islamic State want, or Al-Qaeda, they don't want a free Palestine. They want a Palestine ruled by an iron-fisted theocracy subject to Sharia law.
That's correct. And Dennis Prager did a video the other day I came across, and he was talking about, somebody asked him a question, and I think the question was, why doesn't Egypt allow Palestinian refugees into their country.
Yeah.
And and he did a remarkable job, and he covered all the bases. And he said, well, quite frankly, the Palestinians, and this is not his word, this is my. He said they're a rather unsavory people. So he's being very kind, very polite, and he said, here it is. It's not only the Egyptians, but the Jordanians. Nobody wants the Palestinian people, and this is why, because wherever they go, death follows. They are a violent people by nature, and no nation will accept them in and try to repopulate them. And that was the short version of what he said. He was much more eloquent than that. There is a narrative that the Islamists, the violent Islamists, have created, that, and it's been very, very successful in painting the Palestinians as the victims, as you pointed out, and they simply are not. If they're victims of anything, it's the victims of all those surrounding Arab and Muslim nations who promised them that they would absorb them if they would just leave Israel in 1948. And when they did that, they reneged, and it didn't happen. So now we have the issue.
Yeah, they expected to defeat Israel in that war for independence and then resettle all of these people back into Palestine. And of course, when you look at history, and this will be the subject of my presentation. I wasn't going to do this. I was going to talk about some of our research into Israel and the nature of the conflict. I may include some of that in my presentation, but basically it's going to be on how the modern state of Israel actually came to be, despite the opposition of very powerful influences, people in the West, in Great Britain and the United States, bankers, oil men, the intelligence services working on their behalf. It is really remarkable when you see what had to happen for Israel to come to be. There are those who believe that Israel is the result of Jewish terrorism in the 1920s and 1930s. And while it's true that there were groups like the Stern Gang and the Irgun that were committing acts of terrorism beginning around 1937, this was after 15 years of Arab atrocities against Jewish settlers who had moved to the land based on the promises made in writing to the World Zionist Congress, beginning with the Balfour Declaration in 1917, which was not done in a vacuum, because this was during World War I. The Brits could not just unilaterally say, okay, after the Ottoman Empire is defeated, we're going to take some of its land and give it to this group of people, without consulting our allies in the United States, France, and Italy, and Japan. But the French, the Italians, even the Vatican, the United States, first privately by Woodrow Wilson and later publicly. Later, Congress issued a declaration signed by President Warren Harding. The Japanese even signed in writing, yes, we agree that there should be an independent Jewish state in Palestine. That was confirmed at the San Remo Conference in 1920. It was in the League of Nations Charter in 1922. There was international consensus in the early 20s that this should happen, that the Arabs living under Ottoman Turkish rule for centuries, 400 years, would be given independent lands in Syria and in Iraq, not to mention their ancestral homeland in Arabia. These would be independent Arab states, but they weren't satisfied with that. They were also going to take that strip of land between the Jordan and the Mediterranean. What's not well known, by the way, is that the San Remo Conference originally promised Israel both the land west of the Jordan and the Transjordan, and that was later taken away by the British during the British Mandate. And still, the Zionists were happy with that, but the Arabs then declared war on them after they declared. And again, yes, there were terrorist acts committed by violent Zionists. They were disavowed by the leaders of the Zionist movement. In fact, after they declared independence, I just read that Ben-Gurion had his forces intercept a shipment of arms headed for the Irgun, the terrorist organization, and said, you guys stand down or we will fire on you to prevent this from continuing. And it actually turned into a firefight between the Irgun and what became the Israeli Defense Force. So the bottom line here is that there was more international consensus for the creation of Israel than most people in the West realize. And contrary to the history that we in America have been taught, that we have been Israel's best friend, and Harry Truman was, yes, Truman did recognize Israel within 6 hours of the declaration. He did it without telling his own State Department or ambassadors at the United Nations because they were opposed to it. He didn't tell them until just before he did it. So, yeah, there was a deep state during the Roosevelt and Truman administrations working against the presidents to try to prevent Israel. This is mind-blowing. So anyway, this is going to be my presentation, The Secret History of the Creation of Israel.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, that's fantastic. If that's just a little taste, Derek, that's going to be fantastic. And, might I add, much needed. Much needed.
When you see what Ben Gurion, the hoops he had to jump through, and the way he had to persuade world leaders in the West and in the Soviet Union, it's eye-opening.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I applaud you for doing that. That's really, I'm going to say that is a God ordained timing for you to do this now, because I know you and I understand. We've chatted briefly about it through social media. The state of the church today concerning Israel, and it's getting ugly. It's getting very, very dangerous. And what I mean for that, dangerous to the church as far as its mission. We're losing sight of our mission of evangelism, sharing the gospel with the lost. And part of that is, I mean, if you're locked into a worldview and a theological persuasion that says that the Jews are demonic, and how are you ever going to witness to that Jew? How are you ever going to witness to someone about the veracity of the scriptures when it says that Israel is God's chosen people? And that hasn't changed.
Yeah.
They are still his chosen people. I don't understand the confusion. I know it's there, but a clear thinking and a clear reading of the scriptures is should change people's minds.
Yeah. Romans chapter 11. I mean, if you can read Romans chapter 11 and come away with any other idea than God is not yet done with Israel, then I don't know how to help you. Because Paul was writing 20 years after Pentecost, when the Spirit descended on the church, which is acknowledged as the start of the ecclesia that Jesus created, his church at Pentecost. And yet 20 years later, Paul is writing, I ask then, has God rejected his people? By no means. And then he goes on from there. So it seems clear to me, but I know that there is a spirit that is clouding the minds and the hearts of many. I think that's one of the reasons, Mike, that when we went to Israel back in early May, that the Israelis that we met, looking at us, it's like, why are you here? Our little group of 9 people from 3 continents, just going and visiting with people. We didn't go to see the usual touristy sites that we would normally see on our tour. And I think a lot of people were just moved that I think Israelis are in shock. After October 7th and the horror that took place, they are taking the necessary steps to make sure this never happens again. And now the world is turning on them for that. And I think Israelis are just shocked.
Yeah, they are. And so that's what's motivating me too, Derek, to make sure that every opportunity I have, I tell people what the scripture actually says concerning Israel. I'm old enough that I can remember when this kind of discussion, well, it really wasn't necessary. We had in-house, and what I mean by that is Christians had conversations and discussions and disagreements over theology, over eschatology, but it never spilled out from an in-house conversation. It never spilled out into very visible hatred and anger, denouncing other believers about supporting Israel. Well, you're just a deceived evangelical Zionist. And it's like, Well, I'll take the last two. I am an evangelical Zionist. I'll own that. But what does that really mean? See, if we're going to accept a moniker, then we get to define what that means, not you. So I'm evangelical and I'm a Zionist. But what's wrong with being a Zionist? That simply means that you believe that Israel has a right to exist in her land in peace, not constantly being attacked. What's wrong with that?
Mm-hmm.
When we say the same thing about America or Canada or any other nation?
Sure.
Why is it only Israel that doesn't have a right to defend herself? So anyway, we could really go down that rabbit hole, Derek, but the point is made that we support Israel and her right to the land, to live in the land in peace.
Yeah, amen to that. And that would be true even if we set aside the biblical reasons for supporting Israel, which I don't recommend, especially when you read verses like Psalm 132, beginning at verse 13. For the Lord has chosen Zion. He has desired it for his dwelling place. This is my resting place forever. Here I will dwell, for I have desired it. Okay. Now, if you're going to say that God is not capable, as you say, Mike, of tracking his people throughout time and space and bringing them back, even if it's not the way that we Christians might have done it, well, there was some violence there. We can't have that. And some of the men who were involved in this didn't believe the way we believe. You look at history. I mean, Cyrus, I found this at a secular archaeologist wrote a paper on this. When Cyrus sent the Jews back to Jerusalem, we tend to think that Cyrus was motivated by God to do something special for his chosen people. But in fact, what Cyrus was doing was in response to something that the last king of Babylon had done, Nabonidus. He thought that he could protect Babylon against the Medes and the Persians by bringing all of the idols representing the gods of Babylon into the city of Babylon. So, Ishtar came from Uruk, and, the moon god Sin came from Ur, and so on. And they brought all of them into Babylon to protect Babylon. Of course, it didn't work, but that left all of the cities of Mesopotamia, who were used to having a patron deity protecting their city, unprotected. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so Cyrus's decree didn't just apply to the Jews, it applied to all of these other gods. He sent all of the idols back. He was returning the gods to their cities, and in Cyrus's mind, he was just sending Yahweh back to Jerusalem. Now, that doesn't change the fact that God revealed that he would do it to Isaiah about 150 years before it happened. But what Cyrus thought he was doing, which was just a political move, it turned out to be God's plan, using a polytheist pagan king to do it. And so I don't think I'm qualified to tell God, sorry, your plan here doesn't live up to my standards.
Yeah, you can't do it that way. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, absolutely.
Mike, yes. Again, the conference coming up July 26th and 27th, quite a gathering. Again, I know there are people who would travel across the country just to hear L.A. Marzulli or Paul Begley or Carl Gallups speak, but to bring them together with the likes of Greg Reed, Judd Burton, Joe Horn, and like I said, Sharon and me, we're just Dr. Sherry Tenpenny. We're just honored to be a part of the whole gathering. So as a reminder, where do people go to get information and to register?
Yeah, the conference website is gothereforeconference.com. You can go there. All the information is there. Hotel information, schedule. There's a schedule out now. So just in case you need to know what time to arrive on Friday, I'll just say it. We're going to kick it off about 1:00 on Friday, the 26th. And then it'll go to whenever it's done. That's typically around 9:00 that evening. And then Saturday morning, we'll start again at 9. And we're looking at wrapping up around 8 or so that evening. So there's still time if you're local. You can travel home that night. That's what I typically do because of course, I teach on Sunday. So,
yeah. Now, Pastor Neil Peterson has graciously invited Sharon and me to stick around on Sunday morning. So we'll be preaching on Sunday morning. And I think what we'll do is share what we saw, some of the video and images that we captured during our tour of Israel back in early May. Because again, we visited sites attacked on October 7th. So if you're coming for the conference, you want to stick around on Sunday morning for church at the Harvest Revival Center in Brookville, Ohio. Sharon and I will be there that morning, and then leaving after. I think we're coming back on Monday. Just because when you live close to a national airport instead of a hub like Dallas, you got to take what you can get with the airline schedules. But again, go thereforeconference.com, and if you can't be there in person, please sign up for the streaming video option, because as I said, as we get older, bringing together a group like this will become more and more difficult as we find it more and more difficult to travel. In the show notes below, whether you're watching or listening, I'll put links to Mike's website, drmikespalding.com. He is the pastor of Calvary Chapel in Lima, Ohio. Also links to Mike's recent articles at Harbinger's Daily on what is going on in Israel and how we as Christians process it. Mike, we look forward to seeing you in just a few weeks.
Amen. Thank you very much, Derek. I'm always blessed and honored to join you.
Check the notes below for the links to Dr. Mike Spalding's personal website, also the church, Lima Calvary Chapel in Lima, Ohio, and also his books at Amazon.com. Definitely need to get him back to talk about the prophetic interpretation of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. So we will be definitely talking with Mike. Maybe we can do that while we're in Ohio. Anyway, we'll talk more about that. Got the schedule, so you know when to watch if you're going to live stream the Go Therefore conference. Also, poor Taylor Swift. Yes, she is oppressed by the man, or rather, all men, apparently. Bless her pointy little head. That is straight ahead as A View from the Bunker continues.
Giants, gods, dragons, they're all real. We may not see them with our natural eyes, but their handiwork is evident in what's happening in the world around us, the spiritual warfare taking place.
It is so true. It's obvious in Israel, but worldwide. Historically, we've seen this happen. And we want you to get excited about the Old Testament and the New, and the giants, gods, and dragons within it, because your kids need this information. So do you.
Yes. We're living in prophetic times. Help make sense of it with our special offer through July. Our book, Giants, Gods, and Dragons, which takes a fresh look at end times prophecy. My book's Bad Moon Rising, about the spiritual forces behind Islam. And Last Clash of the Titans, the overlap between what we were told is Greek mythology and the Bible. And our DVD, based on the four horsemen of the apocalypse. All of this, an $80 value for just $45 plus shipping and handling. Now through July, only at our online store, gilberthouse.org/store.
Hi friends, Pastor Mike Spalding here to announce the Go Therefore 2024 conference. We will gather Friday and Saturday, July the 26th and 27th at Harvest Revival Center in Brookville, Ohio. This year we welcome the following scholars, Bible teachers, and researchers: Derek and Sharon Gilbert, Joe Horn, L.A. Marzulli, Dr. Judd Burton, Pastor Paul Begley, Pastor Carl Gallups, Dr. Greg Reed, Tom Dunn, and Dr. Sherry Tenpenny will be doing a book signing for her new book, Walking with God. Live stream is available. Ministry tables are available for like-minded ministries. Hotel and other information is on the conference website, www.gothereforeconference.com. GoThereforeConference.com. Looking forward to seeing you.
Talking the Walk every Sunday night from the beautiful Missouri Ozarks. This is A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. You'll find us online at vftb.net. All the archives are there, but you'll also find us at gilberthouse.org. That's our main web hub, gilberthouse.org. DerekPGilbert.com, my personal website. On the social medias, X, formerly Twitter, at View from Bunker, at Derek Gilbert, at Gilberthouse_TV. That is our main ministry feed on X. Also on Facebook, View from the Bunker, and Truth Social, Gab Me, we get her at Derek P. Gilbert. If you're watching on YouTube, youtube.com/@GilbertHouse. Thank you. Subscribe, click the button or the bell for notifications, and then share that with your friends. And then, please, download our free mobile app, because that guarantees we never get canceled. At some point on this program, or perhaps at some point they'll go back into the archives, going back to 2009 on this program, and find something offensive and then cancel us. But if you've got our app, you are protected because we will not be canceled from our app. The company that develops the app, maintains it for us, hosts all of our content. They're not going to cancel us. So go to gilberthouse.org/app, gilberthouse.org/app, iOS, Android, Amazon Kindle Fire. We've also got Roku and Apple TV versions. You can find those as well at the website and keep up to date with us. The mobile app, some additional features like a community there, the messaging feature, Bible, audio Bible with multiple translations, calendar of our upcoming events, and more, all in the palm of your hand, iOS, Android, Amazon Kindle Fire. You'll find it at gilberthouse.org/app. Well, Taylor Swift, whose popularity I guess I'm just too old to appreciate. I was a top 40 radio disc jockey, music director, program director back in the day. We're going back, 35, 40 years now. But back in the day, I was actually deciding which records would be making it, which ones would not be. Places like Philadelphia, Little Rock, St. Louis, Missouri. But once I got out of the radio business back in the early 90s, around 92, 93, I forget now. Anyway, I decided that it was a lousy way to raise a family and no longer found listening to music radio all that interesting. My favorite style of music, really, besides 50s doo-wop, is a cappella, barbershop quartet. I've been a barbershop quartet singer for years, starting in high school. Member of the Barbershop Harmony Society since about 1978, I think. Off and on. Anyway, not something I actively pursue right now because I tend to overdo everything, which is useful when you're trying to research for a book, but not so much when you're doing things with 3 other guys instead of with your wife and best friend. So anyway, so Taylor Swift, she just eludes me. She strikes me, and if you're a Swiftie or your kids are Swifties, please don't take offense. We all have different tastes, different preferences. So this is not intended to criticize anybody who does like her. She strikes me as like the Stepford singer, like so carefully cultured in her image and so perfect, never a hair out of place, never a thread out of place. She is a very carefully constructed image, which is kind of what you have to be when you're in the music business. Frankly, Sharon back in the day had the opportunity to do that. She doesn't talk about this often, but she was offered an opportunity, a recording contract and a contract to go on tour. This was from Nashville, to go on tour as opening act for George Jones back in the day, when George Jones was at the top of the country music game. And she realized, just credit the Holy Spirit, these guys looking at me have dollar signs where the pupils in their eyes should be. And so she said no. Her family, her band thought she was crazy, but she turned it down because she had enough experience already just on the fringes of the music industry to realize that they were telling her things like, if you just lost 5 more pounds. I mean, she's already back at that point in her life, too thin, and just 5 more pounds. And do this and do that. And basically, you are a construct. You are no longer your own person. Now, Taylor Swift has got enough clout at this point where she probably is able to make her own decisions and tell managers and publicists when she disagrees, which is what makes some of her statements at her recent concerts a little puzzling. For those of us who think critically and logically, so forth, she is, at least as of this recording, I think she's in the middle of her European tour, Dublin, Ireland, I think. Anyway, she is on video now having her tens of thousands of fans at a recent concert shouting along with a lyric in one of her songs from a few years ago, F the patriarchy. F the patriarchy. Now, again, this is a young lady who is a billionaire with private planes, at least one. I think she may have more than one. But anyway, a private jet of her own. She's got a hunky pro football star boyfriend who's willing to go up on stage and embarrass himself for her. I mean, is so the patriarchy that you're wanting to F is that the one that's made you a billionaire? That same patriarchy? Because it seems like it's not really holding you down much. Again, the logical disconnect here is incomprehensible to me. I mean, this is also the same patriarchy that provides the burly young men who assemble, disassemble, haul, load, and drive the massive stage sets and sound gear, sound, lighting rigs, and so forth that she needs to go in front of tens of thousands of screaming fans and yell, F the patriarchy. Were it not for these burly young men and their toxic masculinity, there would be no stage show, and Taylor would be live streaming her songs from an empty room on Facebook or something, as many musicians are compelled to do who have not yet managed to overcome the patriarchy or something. Anyway, it's just doesn't really follow logically. I would also just encourage you, if you or your kids are fans of Taylor Swift, just pay close attention to the lyrics in her recent releases and the imagery in her videos, because she is not the wholesome young lady that she was portrayed to be when she was coming up. I hope it's worth it for her. Bless her pointy little head. Coming up, the next conference, as you just heard with our discussion, in our discussion with Dr. Mike Spaulding, the Go Therefore Conference, Friday and Saturday, July 26th and 27th, the Harvest Revival Center in Brookville, Ohio, not Brookline. There is no Brookline, Ohio. Brookville, Ohio, outside Dayton. L.A. Marzulli, Pastor Paul Begley, Dr. Greg Reed, Pastor Carl Gallups, Dr. Judd Burton, Tom Dunn, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, and Sharon and me. If you can't be there in person, streaming video is available. But if you can be there, if you're anywhere in eastern Indiana, western Ohio, you can make the trip to Dayton. Please take advantage of it, because, again, as I say, ain't none of us getting younger. And so these gatherings, we can bring together a group like this, thanks to Mike and Kathy Spaulding saying yes to the Lord's leading, and Neil Peterson making his church's facility available to us. This will become more and more difficult as the years go on. So we are honored to be a part of it. We hope we see you there. More information and registration at gothereforeconference.com, gothereforeconference.com. The Pitchfork and Hoe Gathering, Valley City, North Dakota, the Eagles Club there. Also pretty neat facility for something like this. Small gathering last year because of the weather in October. This year they're holding it in early September 6th and 7th of 2024. I'll be speaking a couple of times there, and we will have more information for you as it becomes available. They do have a Facebook page. You can find it. Look for Pitchfork and Hoe Gathering. The whole weekend is essentially a gathering of people sharing best practices for small farmsteads. Organic farming, things like that. And then this guy talking about the Bible. So again, Pitchfork and Hoe Gathering, first weekend in September. We are considering another solidarity mission to Israel. This just came up this week as Lipkin Tours reached out to us. They had Sharon and me record a video for other groups, other ministries that have gone to Israel with Lipkin Tours in the past, trying to encourage more Christians to go to Israel now. Israel, 90% of it is safe. Probably more, that may say 95% of it, unless you're right on the border with Gaza, where Hamas can, reach with its short-range rockets, or in the north, where Hezbollah can reach with their short-range rockets. Tel Aviv, the Sea of Galilee region, Tiberias, Capernaum, that's all safe and secure. Jerusalem itself, safe and secure. And when you go there and see some of the sites that were affected directly on October 7th, you will come away with a very powerful impression of what Israel is going through. We also went to a place called Gush Etzion, the site of a massacre in 1948, Kfar Etzion, a kibbutz that was overrun by Arab militias and the Arab Legion, which is the army of Jordan, and about 120, some estimates as many as 150 Jewish settlers were massacred at the end of a battle. They had surrendered, put down their weapons, and then they were just slaughtered. It really connects what happened 75 years ago to what is happening now. And we encourage you to take advantage of it. Again, we're looking at the middle of November, maybe the 7th through the 14th of November. We will let you know in the next couple of weeks. But if you are interested, if this is something you think might be of interest to you, you want to find out more, you can go to our website, gilberthouse.org/travel. We'll post the latest there. Or you can just send us an email directly, info@gilberthouse.org, info@gilberthouse.org. And of course, our website, gilberthouse.org/travel, is where you'll find out the latest information about our tour of Israel next spring, God willing. Looks like things may heat up in the north, war with Hezbollah in Lebanon. We pray that is concluded and that things are peaceful by next spring, because many of the sites in our tour would be in the area that's been evacuated. Hezbollah has effectively created a no-go zone in the north of Israel. And some of the sites like Caesarea Philippi or Banyas, Grotto of Pan, the ruins of the city of Dan, basically in those areas that you just can't go to right now. Anyway, the latest information will always be at the website, gilberthouse.org/travel, March 25th through April 3rd of 2025, the Iron and Myth Tour of Israel with Dr. Judd Burton, Doug Van Dorn, and Timothy Alberino. So we hope and pray that we see you in the Holy Land. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to watch or listen, wherever the case may be. If you're listening, please subscribe, leave a review if you have a spare moment. Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Pandora, wherever else you find us, which is wherever fine podcasts are sold. Our announcer, the inimitable D.C. Good, and A View from the Bunker is a production of Gilbert House Ministries, released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. We do this because we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Good night, Oliver, wherever you are. And we ask you to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.